It's time for our Focus report now. And tomorrow, December 1st, is World AIDS Day, a day for people around the world to unite in the fight against HIV. In recent years, there has been medical progress to combat the spread of the virus. Pre-exposure proxalis, or PrEP, reduces the risk of contracting HIV by over 90%. Between 10 and 12,000 people are on the drug here in France, and as my colleague Jonathan Walsh and myself found out, the medical community and the public at large are split on whether PrEP is a medical milestone or a tool to indulge in risky behaviour. This is a medical consultation where the patient isn't sick. Medical resident Yanis Tamzali is trying to determine if this 40-year-old man in a stable relationship should be eligible for an HIV prevention drug known as PrEP. He begins by subjecting him to a round of questions. After examining recent blood work and uncovering the patient's sexual tendencies, the prescription for PrEP is granted and a follow-up is scheduled in 3 months' time.
I've heard about PrEP for many months, almost a year now without knowing much about it. More and more of my friends started taking it, so I got interested in the topic.
Users can take PrEP once a day or on demand before and after high-risk sexual exposure. New patients are warned that PrEP only protects against HIV and are advised to continue using condoms to prevent contracting other sexually transmitted infections.
People talk about PrEP like a way of taking condoms off, like not using them. So the only thing that you can do is you can try to be very clear on the first consult.
Dr. Jean-Michel Molina has been at the forefront of bringing PrEP to France. In 2016, the country became the first in the world to make the treatment free to access. For him, a drug that prevents against HIV is tantamount to a human right.
So depending on the country, you have different high-risk population. In South Africa, for example, it's both young men and women, heterosexual men and women. In many parts of the world, it's also gay men. It is a human right now for people to have access to these pills, those at high risk of HIV acquisition.
But not everyone is keen on PrEP. Activists in the gay community are worried the drug often encourages risky behaviour. Hervé Latapie thinks PrEP is too strong for a healthy person to be taking and wonders why people are no longer talking about safe sex.
Every treatment involving chemicals is not trivial. You may not have physical side effects, but you could have psychological side effects. There's another aspect regarding PrEP that's important. When you put on a condom, you see it. Your partner sees you're wearing it, and you share your protection. When you're taking a treatment, it's not visible.
Some in the medical community have echoed those concerns. Infectious diseases specialist Dr. Eric Combe worries the drug increases the likelihood of unprotected sex, leading to a rise of repeated sexually transmitted infections, which risk becoming untreatable.
The public who use PrEP must be warned that they are going to be at very high risk of acquiring sexually transmitted infections, that some of them are very difficult to treat, for instance, multi-drug or extensively drug-resistant Neisseria gonorrhea. We already know that tomorrow they will be no more susceptible to antibiotics.
Back at Paris's Saint-Louis Hospital, Dr. Molina acknowledges PrEP users are increasingly unlikely to use condoms, but he says it's unfair to blame PrEP for the increase in STIs, as rates started to rise before the drug came into use. Instead of pointing fingers, he thinks it's time the medical community devotes its energy to combating sexually transmitted infections, like it did HIV in the aftermath of the AIDS epidemic.
We have made a significant progress in terms of prevention with this new tool, PrEP. We now also need to address the issue of STIs and make progress also to reduce their risk, to do more research in terms of vaccines for STIs, treatment, prevention, and the STIs are there for centuries or decades or not HIV.
PrEP may not be commonplace in France, but it is widely discussed in the gay community. Those who take it feel safer, and those who don't are curious.
In case I took PrEP, I would take PrEP and at the same time use a condom to be more protected.
Yes, I'm taking PrEP. Why? Because I found myself taking risks before PrEP.
The drug is changing attitudes to HIV prevention and is growing in popularity. There are currently an estimated 300,000 PrEP users around the world, only a tiny fraction of whom live in France. And while that number is likely to increase, the divisions regarding PrEP are unlikely to go anywhere for now.